Hey everybody, this is Micah with Theriome. Today I'm going to be showing you a little bit about the Theriome panels and essentially the justification for why you as a medical provider might order one of our panels as opposed to the litany of other panels that are out there. If I were to put it into a really simple statement, what I think we can do for you is make precision nutrition and medicine extremely easy. And what I mean by that is we do a really deep profiling of the individual, but we do a lot of the burden of translation for you. So we really segment that out into easy to understand concepts such as mitochondrial function, liver function, neurocognitive function. And so there's some pretty easy ways to use these panels and understand what's going on with the patient from a really high level perspective. Just to give you a little bit of insight into which panels might be best, I think our metabolic panel is going to be better served as a global assessment tool of what is happening with an individual from a metabolic perspective and what you might do from a nutritional perspective, lifestyle perspective to support that patient. It also can give you an indication on some of your interventions. So if you see they're really oxidatively stressed, you might use interventions that you utilize in your clinic. Whereas the microbiome panel, I think, is going to be more suited for people with gut disorders, with people who have microbiome issues that are difficult to resolve. I think that's when you would run the microbiome panel. And so essentially what we're doing is we're taking that these really traditionally complicated data sets, making them easy to understand. And then from there, we give you the recommendations on what to do. And so that's really where we add a lot of value is we have extremely nuanced protocols that we just had some validation that they do work. So essentially we did a retester analysis benchmarked against VO2 max, DEXA scan, lymphocyte panel, and we tested people over a period of time to identify how does their health state alter when they're following our protocol. And what we found was that if people are at least 65% compliant with the protocol, say under a domain of liver health, that they do see significant improvement in about 120 days. So that's really exciting. We still have more validation to do, more to look at, but we are getting the idea that our protocols do work extremely well. In addition to that, what we can do is we don't make any money on any of the recommendations, supplements, interventions, et cetera, but there is a company that we work with that is really cool. What they do is they can make precise formulas for you and it's all white labeled. So you plug in all the supplements that you want the patient to take, the exact milligrams, they have over 400 indexed, I believe, exact milligram dosages that you want the patient to take, send that over to this company. They send a customized formula to the patient with your clinic name on it. The patient is buying through you, and it's totally customized to them. And MOQ is one. So you only need one patient to use this. Really, really cool company and works really well with our panels. So again, what I want to show to you is essentially the justification for using our panels. So implementing precision medicine, how to easily use advanced blood labs and create custom protocols without spending more than 15 minutes on the patient protocol design or the patient report review. The consultation with the patient is going to take approximately 30 minutes depending on what you do. But again, just to reiterate, what we're doing for you is giving a really good global assessment of the patient, what is going on either in their metabolism or the microbiome. We're making that data easy to understand, and you can go in depth in it. Where a lot of people go wrong is when they really try to understand every single biomarker because there's so much. Metabolomics is not something that's commonly used at this point. It will be in 5 years, but the reason is because it's an extremely complicated data set and it's very overwhelming. So we're one of the first companies to actually be making that accessible to you guys. And so people who have been following metabolomics for a long time are like, oh my goodness, thank you. I've been waiting for something like this for a very long time. And then from that complicated data set, we do the burden of translation, and then we give you the actionables. What do you do about this patient? And that's really where the pudding is, right? That's really what we need to understand, because we can talk all day about what's going on, but until we make a change, there's going to be no remediation of their chief complaint, right? And so if you guys don't know who I am, I'm not going to spend much time here, but essentially I got into this industry because my brother had brain cancer and I was just looking for things that would be helpful for him. That got me down the rabbit hole that cascaded into starting a business, started a couple other business, and now I'm the CEO at Theriome. I've been working on this for a couple of years. I think we have a really large potential to assist people. And so I see it as very foundational to be able to get a good assessment of what is going on with somebody at very specific levels and to be able to make changes based on their biological profile. I see that as the foundation of precision medicine. And so that is what we are trying to usher in, is making that more accessible, making that easier for people. And so we get a range of everybody from nurses to extremely biochemically savvy professors who are trying to get a deeper understanding of people. So my goal in life is to reduce suffering in the world. I really do care about this industry and producing a product that works. So I'm not here to make another dollar. I need to make a living, but really I'm here because I want to have a positive effect on the world, and I want to do that through medicine. That's where my passion is. And I'm a family guy. My wife and I have 4 kids. It's fun and crazy and all good. So again, just a review, how to use these complicated labs, how to create evidence-based protocols. We've had somebody recently that was like, man, I was really skeptical that you could make good evidence-based protocols from this breadth of data. But it does appear that you can. And so I'll go through a little bit about how we do that. And then we give you a deeper look, just frankly, than what other panels provide. We're modeling the majority of metabolism, which is difficult to do. But first of all, what is precision medicine? How is it different from other approaches? Essentially, it's just not using a one-size-fits-all approach, right? We're capturing good information about the patient. Ideally, in my opinion, that's going to be the metabolism is kind of first line of defense, unless the patient complaint makes it really obvious what panel to run. Like if you are dead set that it's a thyroid function issue, then run a thyroid panel. That makes sense. But if I'm just doing a global assessment on somebody and they have issues like fatigue and brain fog and other things that I can't necessarily tie it to, I think metabolomics is probably one of the best things that you can run. I think genetics are great, but I think those have some inherent limitations that I'll talk about in a second. And there's a reason we chose metabolomics first. I mean, we have the choice of doing all sorts of stuff. We haven't rushed into this. We have not just pushed it out willy-nilly. We've had, conversation about what we want to do and why. So this was designed from an intelligence standpoint, not just because. But first of all, what makes up a person? So this is essentially the narrative of cellular health, right? So essentially, we want to get down to a molecular level, a cell level, to identify what's going on there, because that gives us indication as to why the organs are the way they are, or why this person is manifesting liver disease. So when we get down to the molecular level, we're seeing aberrations and dysfunctions there that cascade up into larger dysfunctions of the overall system. And so if we can resolve some of the dysfunctions there, that same process repeats, that it starts to resolve some of the dysfunctions that are happening on a higher level. And on the flip side of that, it gives us early detection. I guess I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but it gives us good early signal as to what is going to happen in the future, because if we're starting to see certain molecular profiles, certain dysfunctions that are happening on the molecular level, on the cell level, then that's telling us, hey, this is eventually going to manifest into some problems. And so if we resolve it now, we can straighten our course, we can go a different way, and we can avoid that altogether. That's getting into preventative medicine, right? And so really the objective of looking at the cell or the molecule is to understand what's going to happen upstream. And then the other thing I really like about this layer is that the iterations of decision making is faster. So since we can plug in a certain intervention or a certain supplement at this level and see it respond within a couple months, that gives us the ability then to retest and make further adjustments, basically getting results faster for the individual, because we can work on faster timelines. We don't have to wait for the fatty liver disease to resolve, right? To make intelligent decisions about what to do next. We can see that we're making changes on the molecular level, see those take effect, and then make changes to other pieces of the molecular human. But within the molecular human, as I mentioned, there's a number of different layers that you can look at. There's the genome. These are the omic layers, the genome, the transcriptome, the proteome, the microbiome, the metabolome. These are the 5 fundamental layers of systems biology. So looking at the fundamental systems of what makes a person, these are generally the 5 things that people are going to say, yeah, these are the really important things. And our goal as a company is to put these all together, one blended report. You get, pinpoint precision on everything, but we have to start with individual layers. So we've started with the metabolome and the microbiome. Later this year, we're coming out with the integrated report, which will have both, because right now you're really looking at the microbiome in its individual capacity and the metabolome in its individual capacity. But once you put those together, essentially you're getting an entirely new test, which is the layer of how those things interact and how they interface. And the advantage of that is the protocol design then is much more curated around the heaviest hitting. It essentially makes the protocol design much easier to do because now we can identify like, okay, out of all the things we can do, what are going to be the most impactful to that individual? So that's really the power you get with doing multi-omic analysis is understanding the 80-20 rule, right? What are the few leverage linchpin things that I can do that are going to make the biggest impact over the next few months for this person? The metabolism is really cool though because it's very responsive. It is traditionally called the intersection between gene environment interaction. So that is our biology, the environment outside of us, and how our propensities interact with that environment. Essentially, that is the metabolism. That's where it's registered. And so when we apply different interventions, different supplements, different lifestyle recommendations, such as variants of sleep or exercise, we see that reflected in the metabolism relatively quickly. And so the advantage of that is it's easy for us to make modification to, which is really good because then that tells us what's going to happen upstream. So something like hormones is not so clear as to the changes and the interventions that are going to affect it quickly. And it's a much slower time frame that it's going to start to change. So we can basically start all the way back in the metabolism, make the changes there, and then we're optimizing it really quickly. So speed of outcome is essentially what you get when looking at the metabolism and speed of identifying problems too. So, but I mean, by the time you register an issue in your hormones, like that's been reflected in the metabolism for a long time. So you're getting insights into all those things. Again, this is traditionally just a really complicated data set, which is why not a lot of people use it. So this is a map of known human metabolism. Don't really expect you to make much sense of this, right? And so that's our job to come and do. So we take this incredibly complex data set and translate it into easy to understand aspects. If you have not seen our updated sample report, go and look at it. It's very different from what it was a few months ago. We're constantly making updates to this, so it might be worthwhile checking in every few months if you haven't already gotten an update on it. But at any rate, we take this complicated data set, we turn that into key domains such as mitochondrial health, cardiovascular health, reproductive health, et cetera. And I'm going to also walk you through briefly just how you can communicate this to the patient. You don't attack everything at once. But the advantage of this is we're getting a quick figure on where this person is the most deficient from a metabolic perspective. So either you can take a very simplistic approach and say, I'm just going to address the areas that are the lowest performing, or you can tie it more to the chief complaint of the person, or if you've run standard other labs that you've been running for a long time and you already kind of know what's going to happen. Now this makes it really easy to plug in the narrative of like, hey, we're going to address mitochondrial health, inflammatory health, and your neurocognitive function. Those are the three key areas I see making a big difference for you. And then here's a comparison, by the way, of what a comprehensive metabolic panel covers on known human metabolism. So relatively very small. And I'm not saying it's bad. Like people have been using this for a long time and it's a great tool. I'm just saying when it comes to monitoring metabolism and what's going on in its flux state, you're getting an extremely limited coverage. So we can come in and just blow that out of the water, essentially, is I'm giving a frame of reference there. So again, if you don't know what our panel entails, this is what it entails. So we do sample collection through a finger prick. So we do not need an entire blood draw. That's a huge advantage, especially if you're telehealth. You no longer need to manage the logistics of people. And by the way, this is a platform that's been used in academia for like 15 years now. This is not new science or something that is totally different. What we've done that is different is translated all this and created protocols that are different. But as far as the method of analysis, GCMS, LCMS, NMR, all these things are something that is in quite a few universities, but they're usually used in research settings because they're very complicated and the data it produces is very complicated. So they have a team of researchers that are translating it for that particular study or that particular publication. But we've really just focused in on this key area. So with that clarity, we can give you good reports. So essentially, finger prick sample collection, 2 weeks to get your health report once it hits the lab. We do a ton of translation, saving you time. We profile 68% of known human metabolism. We generate personalized protocols for you using digital twinning technology, and we give you health scores across 12 key health domains. So the domains that we cover are aging, nutrition, inflammation, mitochondria, cardiovascular, reproductive, or endocrine metabolism is what we're going to be calling it from here on out. Liver health, bone health, neurocognitive, integumentary, skin, hair, and nails, environmental toxicity, and mutational load. So just to give you a brief idea of how our protocols are created, it's extremely nuanced. So I had a doctor last week that was saying I had 2 patients that came in. One was recommended NR and one was recommended NMN. And this was a husband and wife. And they asked about, like, why did we get these? They're very similar, right? They're both addressing the TCA cycle. Why did we get 2 very close to each other, but different supplements? Well, on the back end, some of the things are hard for us to put into the report. So for that in particular, I asked Dr. Jasby, like, that question, right? And he said, well, we actually do an enrichment of 912 different enzymatic pathways to come up with that very big nuance of this person is going to perform better on nicotinamide riboside, and this person is going to perform better on NMN. And so it's extremely nuanced, the protocols that are generated from this, and very much based on what that person needs to function optimally. And so essentially what we do is we get the data back. We have 68% of known human metabolism. We create a model of their metabolism on the computer. So we call this the digital twin, where it's that person's metabolism. And then we have over 1,300 interventions that we've mined literature from. So we have all these different supplements, all these different things, all the basic stuff. So we essentially take those and we simulate the effects of those on that digital twin thousands of times. And what we're looking for is what is going to have the best impact, what time of day, what frequency, what stack, what supplements are going to have the most positive impact on this individual. And so from that, that's how we create the personalized protocol. This is something that's very unique to us at this point still. But also then the question is, do the protocols work, right? Proof is in the pudding. Again, I mentioned that retester analysis that we did. Essentially what we see is they have to follow 2/3 of the protocol. So if you're going into the neurocognitive domain and you want to improve neurocognitive function, do 2/3 of the recommendations, and they have to do that 80 to 90% of the time. You don't have to be perfect. We know compliance is a thing. We are not creating this with that in mind of perfection. We are creating it very much so with what people are likely to do and what is realistic. So yeah, protocols work, have to be adherent to a degree. So doing a lab review, I'm going to actually pull up the individual report. So I think that makes more sense. When you get the report, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to have your table of contents. This is your summary page. You're going to spend 3 to 5 minutes here. Now, what you're doing is explaining cellular health, the things that I mentioned before about how when we identify the health of the cell, that tells us what's going to happen upstream or what we need to do to correct some of the problems that are upstream, because the cells make up the body, right? And so it's a pretty simple concept. I would say with this report is sometimes it's not consistent with people's view of their own health. Generally, you're going to see a score. This is generally a score between 38 and 65. If they're 65 plus, they're generally in pretty good health from a metabolic perspective. If they're in that 45 to 65 range, that's kind of in your average. And if they're below 45, generally you're not doing as well as you could. So that's kind of the range of things. A lot of people that are really healthy come to this and expect to be 90 plus. That's just not very likely to happen very often, just to be totally frank, because there are metabolic aberrations and dysfunctions are just very pervasive, and there are ways to fix them. And a lot of times we're not testing and making precise dosages to things. We're making a best guess, or we're hearing about something on a podcast, or even over supplementing. Metabolic saturation is something that we can identify if people are over supplementing. And so all these things can factor into that. And ideally, though, we would be 65 plus as far as our overall health score. But then when you come to this, so you're explaining health of the cell to the patient, you come to this, you're going to select 2 to 4 domains. Do not attack everything. So the reason for that is because it's not meant to do that. It's meant to be a global assessment, and you're selective about what you choose. A global assessment doesn't mean that we do everything globally. That would be like, your patients come in with a chief complaint and you say like, hey, I want to get you better in 2 months, right? And I want you to feel optimally, when you just know that's not very likely. Same thing here. We're doing a global assessment so that you can pick and choose what is most relevant to you. So either you can do it kind of the simple way, which is just looking at the lowest performing scores, or you can go off the chief complaint or just what you clinically understand about the patient based on their intake, maybe other panels that you've run, and say, I'm going to select these 2 to 4 things. So, for example, if somebody has low energy, I might say, all right, well, I think the areas that are going to be the most impactful for you to fix that energy problem so that you wake up feeling good, you don't have an afternoon crash, is going to be mitochondrial health, inflammatory health, and neurocognitive health and liver health. I'm just making this up. But, that would be an example of choosing 2 to 4 domains. Don't attack everything. That's the big thing here. Now, after you've constructed the narrative of what we're looking at is cellular health, and it's like nobody's going to be perfect, we're going to get into these domain pages. Now, with these domains, there's a few things to keep in mind here is we have these subdomains. So essentially the functions of the subdomains create the overall domain, such as aging. So aging is a byproduct of all these functional things happening correctly. So these are subdomains that you can get into. So neurotransmission and signaling molecules here. And then you'll see a score from red to green on how they're performing with that. But I do have something to comment on here. As I said, it's a complicated data set. So neurotransmission and signaling molecules, we only have 4 metabolites underneath this. However, this domain could be calculated using, say, 15 metabolites. But we don't want to be super redundant because our report would get really, really long then. So, we don't put spermidine in every domain that it's calculated in. Spermidine could be calculated into a number of these pathways, but we're not going to list it in every pathway that it's calculated because that's very redundant and it makes the report get very, very long. So anyway, as you're going through with the patient, you're going to be, hey, you're aging. This isn't something that I think we need to focus on right now, but looks like your cellular maintenance pathways are working really well. So we're turning over cells, we're, getting rid of bad cells, all that kind of stuff. So you're just going to give them kind of brief overview on highlights, lowlights, what you think is necessary. What you don't want to do is go really specific. You just want to tie it back to the health of the cell and how aging is a part of that and move on. So one easy way about that is that I've seen doctors do is like, hey, just so you know, I don't really want to go into the biochemistry in a really deep way. I don't think that's super productive. I think what is productive is to look at just overall how you're performing. And then I really want to get into the protocols that I think are going to address the heavy hitting items for you, because it's easy to get kind of mixed up and unproductive and really identifying nutrient sensing, when what we're really trying to do is focus on the heavy hitting items that are going to have the best possibility at raising your understanding and feeling of health. So anyway, you'll go through the different domains as you like. Some people literally just skip down to the protocols. Some people spend a little bit more time here. It's up to you. But again, this is a learn as you go product, because if we told everybody that, hey, you need to learn metabolomics before you can get started, nobody would get started because you'd have to go through a 50-hour course to get a good handle on it. So what we recommend is kind of starting off with just kind of the basics of understanding how to do that patient consult. And then as you're having patients, do your deeper dive, work with our PhDs, ask questions, go through our course, etc., to gain a better understanding of it. Neurocognitive index, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to skip down to the protocols. So when it comes to the protocols, essentially you're going to want to spend 2 minutes on the digital twinning, explaining what that is, because it's really important and gets the patients excited. Then you're going to explain that retest is recommended in 6 months. That's when we anticipate to see a significant improvement in their metabolism. But digital twinning is essentially what I explained earlier. I'm not going to explain it again. You can read this if you want, or you can do it in your own words, whatever's best for you. But then you're going to go through the high hitting domains that you had mentioned before, those 2 to 4 that you selected. One of them that we mentioned was inflammation. So I'm going to go through here and say like, okay, so they're recommending curcumin 500 milligrams twice daily. I really like this for you. I think it's really going to help lower that inflammation so you don't have as much aches and pains in the joints. I think it's also going to help to resolve some of the brain fog you have, yada, yada. So that's just how you go through it. So as you're doing the patient consult, you're doing protocol design. If you have a liaison or a patient educator during the consult, that's even better because they'll just take the notes, punch everything in, and get them the protocol delivered. But if this is kind of when you're doing the protocol design and you're just taking notes of what the patient is going to do for the next few months before they see their results. So let's skip back over to the slide set. All right. So that's how you do the review. So as far as working with us, this is our new roadmap. Basically, we've just added in more education points for you guys to take advantage of if you want. Our goal is to have you as a Theriome certified provider, which is when we'll occasionally refer patients back to you. We don't really take patients through our website anymore. We just refer them out to doctors. But how this works is there's L1, which is initiate. So if you haven't bought or gone through our initial training, go through that. And then there's L2, which is you have your first report back, and then you're going through additional Zoom calls with us. The first one is just learn how to use the report. So you get the data back from that first test kit that you purchase. You'll sign up for the Zoom call, and then you'll attend the Zoom call, and they'll basically do a consultation with you, and that helps teach you. It's better to do 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, however many you can do, or how many you can justify buying, because you'll just learn more the more that you have, and that learning process will be faster. But it's totally up to you. You can buy 1, you can buy 5, you can buy 100. Doesn't matter to us. And then once you go through that one is pretty much mandatory. We try to make everybody go through that. The other 2 are definitely optional, but highly recommended. And you won't be able to get to Theriome certified provider until you do them. But the second one is to learn how to get better outcomes with Theriome. So this is clinical metabolomics, a little bit more at a high level of what metabolomics is, where it fits, all that kind of stuff. Then we get into how to generate more income. So that's helping you guys from a business perspective. We have a pretty lengthy call with me where I get to know your business. This is a slide set that I used at a conference recently. So I'm not trying to sell you guys right now. I'm just using it because it's a good example of what we do. We have created for you over the past few months. We have our course, which you can get access to for free if you are a medical provider. It's a $1,200 course that we give away for free. Ultimate pricing guide, 7 steps to business success, staff training materials, email marketing guide, patient flyers, marketing materials. Like, this is really robust. We put a lot of work into this. So for example, here's the 7 steps to business success. This was not half-ass. We put quite a bit of effort, how to do pricing, how to do different aspects of a report. Here's staff training materials. The yellow is just things that you swap out that's pertinent to your clinic. So this will look like an internal clinic document for you guys. Informed consent template. We have our sample reports, sales and marketing materials. So patient handouts, we both have designed. So this is an FAQ that's designed with our branding. And then we have a template where you can send to your designer or just print this off and put your logo on it. So we have all sorts of materials that we are developing for you guys to help support you in the clinic. So I would safely estimate this is worth over $5,000 between the 3 Zoom calls, all the stuff that we put together just for getting started with us. You guys know this, you know this, you know this, you know this, you know this. I'm going to jump back to, I guess there's not really any slide for it, but a lot of doctors ask, like, what does this replace? Well, there's a few easy swap outs that you can replace other panels with our testing. Micronutrient testing, intracellular testing, those are the easy ones. We're looking at the metabolism, and while we're not directly looking at the nutrients that are within the blood or within a cell, we are looking at how the metabolism is acting and how it's modeling and how it's flexing. And from that, we are able to determine which nutrients are needed in order to get it working properly. So we're accomplishing, I would say, in a better way, the same thing from a different angle. In addition to that, we have all the amino acids on our test. So anyway, I just wanted to give you guys a good overview on what we're doing. It's been a while since I gave a good update. So if there's any way I can support you with bringing precision medicine into your clinic, please just reach out to us.